Aliens sent an SOS, they never expected humanity's response. In the vast, cold expanse of space, a desperate alien race sent out a distress signal. The Zorathians, a technologically advanced species from the distant planet Zarathos, had encountered an existential threat from an unstoppable force known only as the Dread. It was a cosmic entity that devoured entire galaxies, leaving nothing behind but silence and darkness. The Zorathians had watched helplessly as the Dread tore through neighboring star systems, consuming everything in its path. They were left with no other option. They had to send an SOS, reaching out to any species capable of aiding them. The Zorathians had long monitored Earth, but they had never expected much from humanity. Earth was primitive, its technology was a few centuries behind theirs, and their civilizations were embroiled in constant conflict. The Zorathians thought that perhaps they would be able to garner some kind of alliance, some token aid, or maybe even a distraction to buy them time. But what they didn't foresee was the explosive response that humanity would unleash. When the signal arrived on Earth, it didn't come as a small, cryptic message as the Zorathians had anticipated. Instead, it was intercepted by the collective might of the global defense network, the military, scientists, engineers, and hackers all working together. The alien message, carried through the cosmos, was instantly decrypted, analyzed, and interpreted. At first, the leaders of Earth were skeptical. After all, it was hard to believe that aliens, let alone one asking for help, existed. But as the global leaders convened and debated, something extraordinary happened. There was a single, unified response. Humanity had been on the brink of disaster before, and they had always managed to overcome insurmountable odds. They had the resilience, the grit, and the fire to face the unknown. Within days, the world began to prepare for war. Earth's most brilliant minds rallied together, combining technology and ingenuity to develop a fleet of ships capable of confronting the Dread. Nations set aside their differences, forming alliances like never before. The cooperation between the United States, Russia, China, and the European Union marked a new chapter in human history. The entire world had one singular purpose: to save the Zorathians, and to prove that humanity's indomitable will could face any challenge. The Zorathians watched in disbelief as Earth mobilized. They had expected perhaps a few ships, maybe some rudimentary aid, but what they saw was the birth of an entirely new armada, built from the ground up in mere weeks. Humanity's progress, fueled by desperation and unity, had led to the creation of technologically advanced vessels capable of combat and long-range travel. And what they lacked in raw power, they made up for with sheer will and unrelenting spirit. As the combined human fleet, now known as the Galactic Vanguard, launched into the depths of space, the Zorathians felt a mix of hope and terror. They were grateful for the help but also terrified of the unimaginable scale of the Dread. Weeks passed before the Vanguard finally encountered the Dread. At first, it appeared to be just another massive void in space. But soon, the presence of the entity became undeniable, a swirling vortex of destruction, tearing apart everything it touched. The Zorathian fleet was powerless against it, their weapons ineffective, their defenses futile. Then, something extraordinary happened. The human ships, each powered by an unyielding determination and new technologies built specifically for this mission, approached the Dread with unprecedented audacity. Instead of attempting to engage it directly, they devised a new strategy, something the Zorathians had never conceived. They would not fight the Dread with firepower, but with something far more human: creativity and adaptability. Humanity unleashed a fleet of drones, each carrying a unique form of nanotechnology designed to disrupt the Dread's core essence. They spread out like a swarm, attacking the Dread from all angles, eroding its form with every strike. The Zorathian commanders watched in awe as the human fleet, despite their size and relative inexperience, worked together like a well-oiled machine. The battle was not fought with the might of an advanced civilization's weaponry, but with the wild, unpredictable nature of humanity's ingenuity. The Dread was an unstoppable force, but humanity was an unrelenting one. In the end, the Dread fell. It wasn't destroyed completely, but it was disrupted and contained long enough for the Zorathians to retreat and rebuild. The alien race, forever changed, would never forget the sight of humanity, small, insignificant, and yet overwhelmingly powerful in ways no one could have imagined. The Zorathians, humbled and forever grateful, returned to Zarathos, carrying with them the knowledge that the human race had saved them. But more than that, they carried with them the understanding that humanity's true strength lay not in its technology, but in its spirit. As for Earth, the victory was a turning point in history. Humanity had proven to the stars that no matter the size of the challenge, no matter the odds, when it came to survival and protecting those in need, humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The message from the Zorathians was clear. The galaxy had a new power to respect, and it wasn't one of technology or advanced weapons, but one born of the human will to survive, to protect, and to overcome. And so, the galaxy would never again underestimate the response of Earth. For the next time a distress signal went out, they would know exactly who to call. Next, humanity's response was just the beginning. The universe was watching. The defeat of the Dread was a monumental victory for humanity, and its ripple effects spread far beyond Earth. The Zorathians, grateful yet stunned by Earth's unexpected strength, forged an alliance with humankind. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity's technology and tactics were shared with the Zorathians, and Earth's standing in the galactic community shifted overnight. The universe had witnessed a species that could not be crushed, a species that fought not just for survival, but for the preservation of everything it held dear. But this was only the beginning. A council of galactic civilizations, many of which had quietly observed Earth for centuries, now took a keen interest in humanity. Some of these species saw humans as a growing threat, a force that, once united, could rival the most advanced empires in the universe. Others, more cautious, regarded Earth with awe and respect, seeing the potential for cooperation and growth. The Zorathians, once a species desperate for help, now acted as Earth's ambassadors to the broader galaxy, ensuring that humanity's arrival on the galactic stage was not just accepted, but celebrated. But not all were happy with this new turn of events. Among the galaxy's oldest and most powerful races, a dark and ancient force stirred, the Necrothon, an empire that had long since shed the need for compassion or mercy. Their empire was built on destruction and domination, and they had long been the hidden hand behind the Dread's rampage. The Necrothon had been testing the galaxies, weakening them one by one, and now, they saw humanity as the only remaining obstacle in their path to total control. The Necrothon's fleet, vast and ancient, began to move. Their emissaries reached out to Earth, offering peace, but their tone was a thinly veiled threat. They knew that humanity had just shown its potential, and they feared what could happen if the humans were left unchecked. "We offer you a place at our side, Earth," the Necrothon emissary broadcasted across the stars. "Join us, or be destroyed, like all the civilizations before you." Humanity, now on the verge of full galactic integration, was faced with an unprecedented decision. Could they trust the Necrothon, or would they risk everything to protect their hard-won independence? The Zorathians, who had once been the ones seeking help, stood ready to support humanity, but they warned that the Necrothon's reach extended beyond what anyone could truly understand. The leaders of Earth convened in a historic summit, but it wasn't just the political elites who shaped the course of events, it was the voice of humanity, unified like never before. The people of Earth, through vast networks of communication and interstellar outreach, made their opinions known. The message was clear: humanity would never bow to any empire, no matter how advanced or powerful. They had stood against the Dread, and they would stand against the Necrothon, too. But the Necrothon were not to be underestimated. The confrontation that loomed would not be an easy one. The Necrothon's fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, and with them, a terrifying weapon, their ancient Death Star, a colossal construct capable of annihilating entire planets with a single strike. As the massive weapon loomed in space, Earth's leaders had no choice but to act. The Galactic Vanguard, Earth's symbol of defiance, was reassembled, and humanity's new allies, including the Zorathians, the Korans, a race of shape-shifting strategists, and the Tharvok, an insectoid species with advanced bioweapons, rallied behind Earth. But the Necrothon were prepared for battle in ways no one could fully anticipate. It would take everything humanity had to offer, ingenuity, courage, and unity, to face the overwhelming power of the Necrothon. A battle for the survival of all civilizations was about to begin, and humanity would not be fighting alone this time. Every race in the galaxy, from the smallest to the largest, was watching, and they had learned one crucial lesson from Earth's first victory. Never underestimate humanity's will to fight for what it believes in. In the days that followed, the preparation for war grew intense. Earth's scientists worked in overdrive, rapidly advancing weapons technology that could challenge the Necrothon's might. Artificial intelligence, hybrid bioweapons, and electromagnetic pulse devices were developed, innovations built on human adaptability and the desire to protect all life. As the Necrothon's fleet entered the orbit of Mars, humanity's first strike force, led by General Sarah Caldwell, a seasoned military commander who had become a symbol of Earth's new resolve, made its move. The battle would be the greatest the galaxy had ever seen, a fight not just for Earth's survival but for the very future of the cosmos. As the ships of the Galactic Vanguard, now powered by a blend of human tenacity and interstellar technology, took flight, Earth's broadcast systems went live, sending a message across the stars. The voice of General Caldwell resonated through the galaxies. "We are humanity, and we will never surrender." The battle had begun. The galaxy had never seen anything like what was coming next. And one thing was certain, humanity was no longer a fledgling species, it was a force to be reckoned with. Next, the battle for the galaxy, humanity's last stand. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity's resolve was now in the spotlight, and the entire universe was watching the unfolding battle between Earth's fledgling forces and the Necrothon Empire. The Necrothon, an ancient and terrifying civilization, had no intention of retreating, believing their conquest of the galaxy was inevitable. The Death Star, a monumental weapon capable of reducing planets to cosmic dust, hung ominously in the void, its presence casting a shadow over the hope that humanity had fought so hard to secure. The battle would be unlike anything seen before, a true test of human courage, ingenuity, and the alliances forged in the heat of the Dread War. Earth's fleet, now bolstered by Zorathian, Korun, and Tharvok forces, faced off against the Necrothon juggernaut, a fleet of vast, ancient warships that had swept through star systems, leaving a trail of destruction. General Sarah Caldwell stood on the bridge of the flagship Vanguard, her gaze focused on the approaching Necrothon fleet. Her heart raced, but there was no fear in her. The warships that surrounded her were a symbol of Earth's spirit, an unyielding force that had evolved through centuries of adversity. "We fight for the future of all civilizations," she whispered, her words carried to every ship in the fleet. "No one fights alone. This is our moment." The first shots rang out as the Necrothon unleashed their firepower. Their ships, massive beyond comprehension, opened fire with devastating energy beams. They were targeting Earth's fleet with precision. But humanity had something the Necrothon had never encountered: unity, adaptability, and a relentless drive to survive. The Vanguard's strategy. Earth's fleet had a new tactic. They were outnumbered, but they weren't going to fight the Necrothon head-on. Instead, they relied on their flexibility. The human ships, now equipped with advanced cloaking technology developed with Zorathian guidance, scattered and created chaos in the battlefield, evading the Necrothon's massive, slow-moving warships. The Koruns, with their expertise in strategic warfare, deployed decoys and fake transmissions, leading the Necrothon forces into traps. The Tharvok's biomechanical warriors, designed to operate in the harshest environments, infiltrated the Necrothon's outer ships, sabotaging their internal systems with terrifying precision. And then there was humanity. Earth's engineers had devised an incredible weapon, an experimental energy pulse weapon capable of disabling a ship's internal systems for brief moments. It wasn't enough to destroy the Necrothon ships outright, but it was enough to buy time. In the midst of the chaos, the Necrothon Death Star launched a devastating attack on Earth's outer colonies. The first strike in what was sure to be a series of annihilations meant to demoralize humanity. But Earth did not flinch. General Caldwell activated the first wave of the Vanguard's new offensive. The energy pulse weapon was unleashed, its beams cutting through the vacuum of space toward the heart of the Necrothon fleet. Ships across the battlefield went dark, their systems fried by the pulse, leaving them vulnerable to follow-up strikes. As the Necrothon fleet reeled from the assault, Earth's forces seized the initiative. The battle raged on for hours, the skies above Earth and Mars crackling with explosions, each side refusing to give an inch. The turning point. The battle was nearing its peak when humanity's greatest asset came into play, its people. Across the galaxy, every nation and civilization that had ever known Earth sent their support. Ships from distant worlds, each with their own technologies, philosophies, and species, joined the fray. Humanity's victory over the Dread had forged a bond that transcended species and political boundaries. As reinforcements arrived from all corners of the galaxy, the Necrothon's once imposing fleet began to falter. Their superior numbers were not enough to compensate for the tenacity and unpredictability of a united, diverse front. Humanity's unwillingness to succumb to fear gave them the upper hand. But the Necrothon were relentless. In a final act of desperation, they activated their Death Star's full destructive power, aiming it directly at Earth. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of wiping out entire continents in a single blow. The clock was ticking. The Death Star's massive cannon began to charge, its energy signature lighting up the entire battlefield. A desperate gamble. In the final moments, General Caldwell made a gamble, knowing that the energy pulse weapon had disabled the Necrothon's ships temporarily. She ordered the Vanguard to get in closer than any human ship had ever dared to approach the Death Star. "Fire everything we've got," she commanded, her voice steady. The Vanguard unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, supported by every ship in the fleet. The pulse weapon, now calibrated with Zorathian tech, fired one final shot, a concentrated beam aimed directly at the Death Star's core. The beam struck true, igniting the Death Star's core in a brilliant flash. The weapon faltered, its cannon misfiring just as it was about to fire its deadly blast. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, sending a shockwave across the battlefield and throwing the Necrothon fleet into disarray. It wasn't over yet. The remaining Necrothon warships, though decimated, continued to fight, but without their Death Star. The balance of power had shifted decisively. Humanity's forces, aided by their new allies, began to overwhelm the Necrothon ships. Victory and a new era. After hours of brutal combat, the Necrothon fleet finally retreated. Their once mighty empire, built on fear and domination, had been shattered by the ingenuity and resolve of humanity and its allies. Earth had not only survived but emerged victorious, proving that even against the most ancient and powerful forces, humanity could stand its ground. But this victory was just the beginning. The battle for the galaxy had shown the universe something incredible. Humanity was not merely a new player on the galactic stage. It was a force to be reckoned with. A new era had dawned, one where Earth and its allies would work to rebuild, protect, and grow. The Necrothon Empire had fallen, but there were whispers of even darker forces waiting in the wings. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, but the question remained, what challenges lay ahead, and would Earth be ready to face them? The galaxy would soon find out. Next, the Dark Horizon, a new threat emerges. The victory over the Necrothon had changed everything. The galaxy, once a place of silent wars and unseen threats, had been shaken to its core. Humanity's rapid rise from an isolated species on the verge of extinction to the catalyst that turned the tide against an ancient empire was a story that would be told for eons. But as the dust of the battle settled, a more ominous question began to loom. The Necrothon, as ancient and powerful as they were merely one faction in a much darker and more complex web of galactic politics. The shadows of the far beyond. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, beyond the reach of the known empires, something had begun to stir, a presence older than the stars themselves. As the Necrothon retreated, a race known as the Zalkori had taken notice of Earth's growing influence. Unlike the Necrothon, the Zalkori did not seek domination through direct warfare or destruction. They were subtle, patient, and manipulative, masters of psychological warfare and manipulation. The Zalkori had been watching Earth for centuries, silently infiltrating the minds of various species, subtly sowing the seeds of distrust and division. Now, with the Necrothon's defeat, they saw humanity as the next major threat to their carefully constructed power structure. The Zalkori were not interested in galactic conquest, they sought something far more dangerous: control over the very thoughts and will of the galaxy's inhabitants. The infiltration begins. It began with whispers, small, almost imperceptible signals from deep space. At first, no one noticed. The transmissions were encrypted with such complexity that even the most advanced AI systems could not fully decrypt them. And even when they were decoded, the messages were fragmented, cryptic messages of warning, of trepidation, of fear. The Zorathians were the first to recognize the threat. They had faced the Zalkori millennia ago and knew the danger they represented. Their psychic powers, though less potent than the Zalkoris, could sense the disturbance in the fabric of reality, the subtle shift in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The Zorathians sent out urgent transmissions, alerting humanity to the unseen threat. General Sarah Caldwell, still coordinating Earth's efforts from the vanguard, received the first transmission from the Zorathians. It contained a chilling warning: the Zalkori were coming. At first, humanity dismissed the warning. The galaxy had just experienced its first great war, and the Necrothon had been driven back. Peace, it seemed, was within grasp. But as the strange transmissions continued, with more and more planets reporting incidents of strange behavior, anomalies in thought, hallucinations, and mass unrest, the truth became undeniable. The Zalkori had begun their influence. The subtle war. Unlike the open battles of the Necrothon, the war with the Zalkori would not be fought with ships or weapons. It would be a war for the mind. The Zalkori were skilled in altering perceptions, in bending the will of others to their advantage. They could infiltrate any neural network, implant thoughts, and turn entire populations into unwitting pawns. They played the long game, whispering into the hearts of leaders, pushing them towards self-doubt and fear. Humanity's first encounter with the Zalkori came not through direct conflict but through a shocking series of events. Leaders across the galaxy, from Earth to the farthest reaches of the Corran's homeworld, began to act strangely. Military alliances fractured. Long-standing treaties were suddenly torn apart. Allies turned against one another, and old hostilities resurfaced. The Zalkori had already begun their subtle war of psychological manipulation. The first real sign came when Earth's most powerful leaders, including General Caldwell, began experiencing strange dreams, visions of a vast, void-like space, with dark, whispering voices that promised power, control, and a future beyond what they could imagine. The dreams were not just dreams, they were memories, planted deep within their subconscious, pushing them toward actions they couldn't understand. A few weeks after these events began, an unprecedented incident occurred. Several high-ranking members of the Galactic Council, including ambassadors from Earth, the Zorathians, and other allied species, mysteriously disappeared during an emergency session. Those who searched for them reported seeing strange, shadowy figures, tall, gaunt beings who wore cloaks of pure darkness. The ambassadors' whereabouts remained a mystery, and the search for them turned into a dangerous, elusive quest. Humanity's response. Realizing the gravity of the situation, General Caldwell called for a global summit on Earth. The Zorathians, the Corrans, the Tharvok, and even the once reluctant species of the Galactic Council now gathered on Earth's soil. It was no longer a time for mere defense, it was time to take the fight to the Zalkori. The question was, how could they fight an enemy that existed in the shadows of the mind? The answer came from an unlikely source, the human people. Over the years, humanity had developed a remarkable ability to resist mental manipulation. It wasn't that humans were immune to the Zalkori's influence. Rather, they had something the Zalkori had not accounted for: the strength of the human spirit. Unlike other species, humans had a unique resilience to psychological pressure. Their capacity for doubt, curiosity, and self-reflection made them difficult to control. Humanity had faced manipulation and oppression throughout its history. Now, it would use that experience to fight back. A new weapon was developed, an experimental device called the psychic distortion field, designed to disrupt the Zalkori's ability to influence thoughts. It could create a barrier in the minds of individuals, allowing them to resist the mental warfare. However, the device required a connection with the collective consciousness of humanity itself, an unprecedented risk. The world's greatest minds, aided by the Zorathians and Corrans, worked tirelessly to create the device. Meanwhile, General Caldwell formed an elite task force, the Sentinels, made up of humans and their allies, tasked with hunting down the source of the Zalkori's influence and breaking their hold on the galaxy. A dark alliance. But not all was as it seemed. As the Sentinels ventured deeper into the galactic underworld, they uncovered a shocking truth. Some of Earth's own leaders had already been influenced by the Zalkori, and they were working against humanity's best interests. The Zalkori, it seemed, had their hands in far more than anyone had realized. The trail ran deep, and as humanity and its allies prepared for the final battle, they faced not only the threat of the Zalkori but also the insidious corruption of their own ranks. The war for the mind was beginning, but humanity would not go down without a fight. They had learned to stand strong against the physical forces of the universe, and now, they would have to prove that their spirit could withstand even the most insidious manipulations. The galaxy was about to enter its darkest chapter yet, but Earth was determined to face it head-on. After all, humanity had never been afraid of a challenge, even if that challenge came from within. Next, the battle for the mind, humanity's last defense. As the Zalkori tightened their grip on the galaxy, their invisible influence spread like a creeping shadow, infiltrating the minds of leaders and civilians alike. The galaxy had never faced an enemy like this, one that manipulated thought and perception with such precision. The Necrothon's brute force was nothing compared to the quiet, insidious way the Zalkori eroded free will. The Sentinels, humanity's elite force, had been tasked with uncovering the source of the Zalkori's influence and striking at the heart of their operations. General Caldwell, now at the helm of this fragile coalition of galactic powers, knew that the stakes had never been higher. But as the war for the mind progressed, humanity's true challenge revealed itself, not just the Zalkori, but the growing division within their own ranks. The betrayal within. As the Sentinels dug deeper, they uncovered something terrifying. It wasn't just the Zorathians, the Korans, or the Tharvok who were at risk. It was humanity itself. Several high-ranking officials on Earth, including influential politicians, military commanders, and even members of the Galactic Council, were found to have been compromised by the Zalkori. Subtle whispers, the promise of greater power, the allure of a utopian future, these were the tools the Zalkori had used to turn Earth's own leaders against the very ideals they had fought to protect. This revelation shattered the fragile unity that had held the galaxy together since the Necrothon War. Long-standing alliances began to fray, as suspicions mounted and trust evaporated. Who could humanity rely on if even their own leaders were under the Zalkori's influence? General Caldwell knew that they had no choice but to confront the threat head-on. The psychic distortion field was ready, a weapon designed to disrupt the Zalkori's hold over the mind. But to deploy it, humanity would need to act quickly before the corruption spread beyond repair. The device could only be effective if it targeted the neural nexus where the Zalkori had woven their influence. This nexus, the heart of their power, was located on a distant, forgotten world on the fringes of the galaxy. But that world was no ordinary planet. It was a world long rumored to be the site of a forbidden relic, a device that could amplify the mind's power to terrifying levels. According to ancient texts discovered by the Zorathians, the planet was once the seat of a forgotten race, the Lothari, a species whose telepathic abilities were so powerful that they were said to have controlled entire civilizations through sheer mental dominance. The Lothari were thought to have vanished eons ago, leaving behind only their ruins. But the Zalkori had rediscovered the planet, and now, they were using the Lothari technology to warp the galaxy's collective consciousness. The final mission. Caldwell made the decision. The Sentinels would lead a final mission to the Lothari homeworld. But it wasn't going to be easy. The Zalkori, now aware of the impending threat, had begun to fortify the planet with their psychic defenses. Their most powerful telepaths were stationed there, ready to defend the Nexus at all costs. Humanity's greatest minds had warned that even with the psychic distortion field, direct confrontation with the Zalkori on their home turf would be dangerous. The Sentinels, composed of a small but elite team of humans, Zorathians, Korans, and Tharvok, were given the unenviable task of infiltrating the planet, locating the Nexus, and deploying the field. With the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, they had no room for error. The mission would take them deep into enemy territory, into a battle of wits and will against an enemy that could bend reality itself. Into the heart of the Zalkori. The journey to the Lothari world was fraught with danger. The team's ship, the Nexus, entered the planet's atmosphere under the cover of a powerful cloaking field, hoping to avoid detection by the Zalkori. But even cloaked, they could feel the weight of the psychic pressure pressing down on them. Every mind on the planet was under the influence of the Zalkori, and the closer they got to the heart of the world, the stronger that influence became. As they landed in the ruins of an ancient Lothari city, the sentinels immediately felt the shift. The planet seemed to hum with an eerie, unnatural energy. The air was thick with an unsettling quiet, and every movement felt like it was being watched. The deeper they ventured into the ruins, the more they began to experience the Zalkori's influence firsthand. One by one, the sentinels began to hear the whispers. At first, it was just a faint voice in the back of their minds, but soon, it became louder, more persistent. The Zalkori spoke in a language that was half-formed, a jumbled mix of promises and threats, of power and submission. It was the essence of their manipulation, the slow, gradual erosion of will. As the sentinels pressed on, they found themselves at a crossroads. They could feel their thoughts being tugged in different directions, pulled by the Zalkori's influence. Old fears resurfaced, doubts about their mission, about humanity's place in the galaxy. For a moment, it seemed like they might succumb to the whispers, like so many before them. But then, something incredible happened. General Caldwell, the heart of humanity's resistance, broke through the haze. Her mind, though vulnerable to the Zalkori's influence, was resolute. She had faced overwhelming odds before, and she would not let her people fall prey to this mental warfare. She reached out to her team, anchoring them with the strength of her will. Her voice cut through the whispers. "Stay with me, stay together. We are humanity, and we do not yield." It was enough. The team fought back the influence, drawing strength from their unity and their shared purpose. Together, they reached the heart of the Lothari city, a massive structure that stood tall above the ruins. Inside, they found the Nexus, an ancient, glowing device that pulsed with the same energy they had felt in the air. It was the source of the Zalkori's power, the focal point of their manipulation. The psychic distortion field was activated, sending a wave of energy that began to unravel the Zalkori's hold. The device hummed as it absorbed the distortion, its energy swirling, destabilizing. But the Zalkori would not let it go without a fight. The final confrontation. As the sentinels prepared to deploy the final blow, the Zalkori's most powerful telepath, a being known only as the Mindbinder, appeared before them. He was a towering figure, his eyes glowing with a cold, calculating light. His mind was vast, far beyond anything humanity or their allies had encountered. "You think you can break my control?" The Mindbinder's voice echoed in their minds. "You are nothing but pawns in a game you cannot understand." The battle for the future of the galaxy began. General Caldwell, aided by the strength of her team, resisted the pull of the Mindbinder's power. They fought not with weapons but with their will. The battle was not just physical, it was a clash of minds, of ideologies. The Zalkori sought to control the galaxy. Humanity sought to preserve its freedom. As the Mindbinder unleashed wave after wave of psychic attacks, Caldwell focused on the device, channeling her will through the distortion field. The energy field flickered and flared, but she pushed through, fighting the overwhelming force. In a final, desperate act, she unleashed everything she had left, channeling every ounce of human strength, unity, and resilience into the device. With a deafening, psychic explosion, the Nexus shattered. The Zalkori's hold over the galaxy crumbled in an instant, and the psychic pressure lifted. The dawn of a new era. The galaxy was free. Next, the long shadow, the Zalkori strike back. The galaxy, having barely recovered from the Necrothon War, now found itself facing the greatest threat it had ever known. The defeat of the Zalkori's mental manipulation on the Lothari homeworld had been a victory, but it was far from the end of the story. For all their retreat, the Zalkori were not easily vanquished. They were ancient, powerful, and patient. Their defeat had only fueled a deeper resolve. The galaxy's fragile peace was already beginning to fracture again. Although the psychic disturbance had lifted, the scars of the Zalkori's influence were still fresh. The coalition of species, so recently united against the Necrothon and the mental war, began to fray as distrust grew once more. Earth's alliances, fragile to begin with, began to dissolve. There were whispers of ancient promises and betrayals yet to be uncovered, secrets hidden beneath the surface of the new galactic order. And deep in the darkest corners of space, beyond the reaches of the known galaxy, the Zalkori had begun to regroup. The shifting sands of power. Humanity, exhausted from its recent victories and overwhelmed by the complexities of galactic politics, had begun to turn inward. Earth's focus was on rebuilding, on healing from the damage of the last few wars. The vast infrastructure of the galaxy had been shattered, and there was a collective exhaustion that hung over every major world. Military forces had been demobilized. The economy, once thriving in the wake of the Dread War and Necrothon conflict, was now in decline. But peace, as it turned out, was not in the cards. The Zalkori, with their vast psychic powers, had slowly infiltrated key political systems again, this time more subtly than ever before. Their method was different now. They were no longer seeking to control entire minds through brute force, but instead through division and fear. They had learned from their previous mistakes. Now, they played the long game, manipulating the weak points in the galaxy's fragile infrastructure, seeding distrust between former allies. The cracks were small at first, just a few minor incidents of strange behavior, a few erratic decisions from influential leaders. But soon, the infection spread, and the once strong alliances began to collapse. The return of the Mindbinder. It was during this time of instability that the Mindbinder, the most powerful of the Zalkori telepaths, reappeared. His disappearance after the destruction of the Lothari Nexus had been seen as a victory, a sign that the Zalkori had been truly beaten. But the reality was far darker. The Mindbinder had survived. His consciousness had been scattered across the stars, floating in the currents of psychic energy, gathering strength. His physical form, while lost, had returned through the deepest recesses of space. He had become a force of pure mental energy, untethered and formless, able to infiltrate and influence vast areas of the galaxy. He was no longer just a single being. He had become the emissary of the void, a sentient, collective force that controlled the minds of countless agents and manipulated entire civilizations from the shadows. The galaxy, as it had feared, had underestimated the true power of the Zalkori. The galactic collapse. It started with a series of coordinated cyberattacks across key galactic trade routes. Entire colonies were cut off, stranded in the black of space, their communication systems and defenses crippled. The attacks appeared to be the work of a rogue faction, but the pattern was too familiar. As the galaxy's major species scrambled to understand what was happening, the first signs of widespread mental influence began to surface. Individuals once considered incorruptible, veteran leaders, experienced generals, and trusted diplomats began to exhibit strange behavior. There were whispers of dissent among the Zorathians, the Korans, and even the Tharvok. Unity was crumbling, and the Zalkori were behind it. But the most disturbing revelation came when the Zalkori, in an unexpected move, launched a massive assault on Earth itself. The Siege of Earth. Humanity's homeworld, Earth, had long been considered the center of the galaxy's defense, the symbol of resistance. It was protected by the most advanced military technologies and strategic forces in the galaxy, bolstered by alliances formed in the wake of the Necrothon War. But the Zalkori had prepared for this moment. Using their vast telepathic network, they struck at the very heart of Earth's defenses. The assault was not through physical force, but through psychic domination. In a single, devastating strike, the Mindbinder's influence blanketed Earth's military leadership. The minds of the planet's top generals and commanders were hijacked. They were bent to the Zalkori's cause. Earth's great defenses, which had once been humanity's pride, turned against them. The first wave of the Zalkori invasion came not in the form of warships, but with agents who had infiltrated Earth's very government. Their role was not to conquer, but to sow fear and division. Together, they fractured the unity of humanity's political structure. The citizens, already vulnerable from previous wars, began to turn against one another. Humanity was on the brink of collapse. The last stand of humanity. General Sarah Caldwell, having narrowly escaped the psychic influence of the Zalkori, rallied what remained of humanity's resistance. She was not just fighting for Earth anymore, she was fighting for the very soul of her species. Caldwell, having experienced the Zalkori's power firsthand, understood the stakes. She knew that the only way to stop the emissary of the void was to break their control over Earth's key leaders and dismantle the psychic network that had grown too powerful. With the aid of the few remaining members of the Sentinels, warriors who had resisted the Zalkori's influence, Caldwell launched a daring mission to the heart of Earth's capital, where the Zalkori's psychic nexus was most concentrated. The mission would take them deep into the remains of Earth's most secure facilities. Now controlled by the Zalcori's forces, the enemy was everywhere, and time was running out. The Resistance's plan was audacious: infiltrate the core of the psychic network and sever the Zalcori's influence on Earth's leadership. To do so, they would need to reach the central hub of the Mindbinder's network, a place where the Zalcori had physically connected their minds to humanity's. The team had only one chance to destroy it, and if they failed, Earth and the galaxy would fall under the Zalcori's control for good. Into the depths. The journey was perilous. As Caldwell and her team made their way toward the psychic hub, they encountered the emissaries' agents, humans and aliens alike. Their minds twisted by the Zalcori's influence. Some fought with the ferocity of machines, others with a sense of lost hope. They were all pawns in a game much larger than they understood. But the Sentinels pressed on, drawing on the strength of their shared purpose. When they finally reached the heart of the psychic nexus, the true power of the Mindbinder was revealed. The emissary of the void stood before them, not a single being, but an amalgamation of thoughts, memories, and emotions, a swirling mass of psychic energy that filled the entire chamber. "You cannot win," the emissary intoned, its voice echoing in their minds. "I am the future of the galaxy. Resistance is futile." The final battle was not fought with weapons but with wills. The Sentinels, backed by humanity's unyielding spirit, fought the Mindbinder in a war of minds, each of them pushing back against the influence of the void. They focused on the one truth that had always defined humanity: their relentless desire for freedom, their unwillingness to yield.